Some of the absolute best bang for your buck stuff in terms of getting better at Overwatch 1 by watching content on YouTube was map review guides. And I don't say that lightly. I've done quite a bit of educational content on Overwatch on YouTube myself. I've, of course, coached contenders at a professional level, top finishes in 3 different regions. I have a pretty good idea of this, understanding how these maps work, not just the basics of the flank routes, the health packs, things like that, but understanding the game in terms of lanes, how to approach it from different ways, how to break choke, some of the power positions. This is some of the most valuable stuff you can have in Overwatch. And if you want a head start heading into Overwatch 2, well, we have a Circuit Royale community pug scrim that we got to take a look at here. So let's go through it. Let's dissect this and let's talk about the map. First things first, for the attackers, we have first spawn. It actually has 4 spawn doors, 1, 2, 3, and then there's a 4th one over there that you can come out of. These 2 were effectively the same, so it's really got 3 exits that we're talking about. It's not going to be very effective to spawn camp. Okay, that makes sense. Let's go ahead and move on to the actual first half of first tier. And this is what we're looking at in terms of our lanes here. We have our standard main lane, which is the one that the cart follows. Eventually, it's going to have to go under a bridge. We'll keep that in mind for later. We have a second lane that actually goes through here and comes out on high ground that is pretty darn good for the attackers. This is attacker high ground. It leads like this. You've got this ledge that you can play off of. The defenders aren't really going to be able to hold this terribly well long term because they don't have a great kite out spot from it. Could they do a little pre-poke from here? Yes, but the cover isn't amazing unless they're here, and then they have to run across an opening. This is more likely the place, this high ground tier, that they'll do the pre-poke at spawn from and then rotate out. What we are looking at in terms of this left lane then becomes, hey, there's a path through here, goes like that, nothing too wild, fine, whatever, low ground path through flank there. But let's take a look at some of these flank routes because you need to know where they are, what they look like. This is our left path. Once again, we have 3 exits from here, so you can go from effectively the safety-ish of your spawn as attackers. You can go out through there into mid, or you can go through onto this left route. Effective flank route, mostly going to be attacker favored. Make sure you clear it initially, though. And we can then go ahead and move on to, from our attacker's perspective, the right flank route. We are looking at it from the defender's perspective right now. You can see the attackers can come through that. It's something you'll have to pay attention to. It's something that you'll have to shut down, not too wild. Anytime you're trying to break a choke, getting control of multiple angles is a fundamental thing in Overwatch, in shooters in general. It's still going to be important in Overwatch 2. So here's the wrap up of the first half of first point from attacker's perspective. We can see this, and we can see our first really meaningful power position. And it is this spot right here. If we look at this, our cart will eventually have to go under this bridge. That's going to be an absolute pain. The only real ways up to this spot that helps control this bridge are this staircase right here. This is where our high ground's terminated from an attacker's perspective. So this staircase right here, or going past the bridge and circling up and looping back and going across the bridge like that, which isn't terribly feasible. So the first real meaningful battle is going to be over this right here. You're going to have to do what you can to get control of it. You've obviously got some poke options from here, some poke options from here, and some poke options from this right flank as the attackers. That's something that you'll want to be aware of. That's how we are going to think about, hey, what's our approach to break this down? Once you break this down, then we get to see the second half of first. And for this second half of first, here's a nice wide angle shot we have of it. From here, it really only looks like we have one lane. That's not actually true. By the way, the point ends here. Once you get the cart to here, that's the end of first. You move on to second, and these doors open and turn up into your spawn points for attackers going into second. But let's take a look at another shot. It'll give us a little bit more to look at here. Let's just see the lanes a little bit better. Okay, so this looks a little more familiar. We have our main lane down here, wraps through, no problem. We have a second lane that goes through here, through this doorway, actually goes, lets out right where the point caps, that makes sense, and then can turn out here as well. So, okay, this is an influential lane. This is the short flank route. It has a fair amount of cover. It's the place that you'd see the Reapers, things like that. Okay, makes sense. And then we actually see that there's a bit more coverage here. There's these barriers, there's some plants out there. Gives you some form of coverage, so this right side outside in these plants is your third lane. But something we want to be aware of is the defenders have a another pretty good high ground spot here. This does lead over to this. Excuse me. We are looking at this does lead over to this. Great. They do have access there from the defender's perspective. As the attackers, though, you're going to have to sneak someone through this garden in order to challenge and fight this, because these attackers have some pretty reasonable high ground. They get to attack. Mid lane is just way too in the open, and if you try to shoot back at those people on high ground, they've got high ground. They've got a building that they can duck into for cover. This is going to be another bit of a thing to conquer as attackers. You're going to have to effectively sneak someone out the right side or get some through this more covered left flank. This more covered left flank may honestly be the answer, the standard answer. Really put pressure here. You can get people in more easily and then get better access to maybe jump up a dive or something like that, or use that as the distraction to then snake someone through this outside lane. But let's go ahead and move on to our second point. And this is second point, again, starts right here. This is the cap. This was one view of it. We can take a look at a second view of it. Nothing too crazy here. As we go to it, it's a switchback, which is interesting, new for Overwatch. We've, of course, got our mid lane that looks like this. Okay, that makes sense, and then would go like that and finish. We actually do have a right lane. The right lane isn't super visible here, but it was just this path up through here. Okay, it's a pretty thin path. It would be terrible to walk up through Junkrat grenades onto that. A single trap, be it a Widow trap, a Junkrat trap, might do a fair amount, or some sim turrets to shut that down, but that route does exist. And then you do actually have another route as well, where this staircase lets out effectively over here. And I'm going to give you guys a different shot so that you can see that, but let's go like this. And we're talking about this door here leads out right over here. Makes sense. And if we wanted to see this other route, it is this right here like this. So this flank route, again, is your covered flank route that you're going through. Let's use blue for that. This is your covered flank route. Again, you wouldn't want to run into a Reaper, someone like that in here. That could be painful. Would be very good for you if you were someone like that Reaper. Hey, more enclosed space. This is another tough one. This is clearly going to be another case of the defenders have some good high ground that you have to push into, and you don't have the best routes. The angles that you create by using some of these different routes aren't actually amazing. Your main route sort of turns into your left route, as we can see, because your main route would take you like this. And that probably will be the standard. Make sure you send flankers through to effectively threaten this so that you have some way to help break this choke. Some of you might be thinking, no, there must be a further left route here. There really isn't. If we back up over there, yes, a door does come out there, but that door was back for second. It doesn't then go up through here like this, like we might want it to. Instead, you do have this door and this door and this door connected well enough. You can use those. You could go through here to get out here and then go into those if you want, but there's no way to go harder left behind these buildings. So that's sort of what we're stuck with. Go into that with your own peril. So now let's take a look at, we saw our second point flanks here. Now let's look at the end here. This is, of course, where it caps right here on our screen. Nothing too wild here. This is just the end. But something I would want to be aware of is there's only one flank route going into third. There's this door, which is the flank, and then there's the main door going into third. So that's not terribly helpful for the defenders, because the defenders aren't going to be able to use that as a choke. But it is pretty good if you win as the attackers. You push ahead of the cart, and you then are trying to stop the defenders from filtering back in, working their way back into fight, because you've only got 2 instead of 3 lanes that you need to control. This space over here, not too interesting. Really not a ton going on here. There's some cover. You can use it as a lane to wrap around, don't get me wrong, but there's sort of a wall that jets out off the screen that sort of makes it a little bit of a pain to access this, and you're already right on top of it. That said, yes, it is your short flank route for your Genjis, your Tracers, that sort of thing. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to third point here. And we are going to see on third point, here's a thing. We've got our main route through here, like this. It goes back to that main entrance that we saw. We are currently walking up as Sombra, this right flank route here, and this right flank route has stairs, easily accessed for the attackers, leads through here. We have another one of these important overpasses that we're looking at, and then you can go back across left like that. And what we're actually going to do now is we're going to flip the map. We flipped the the map, we effectively came across that overpass and dropped down here, and now we see this a little bit more from a defender's perspective. So we've got our ideas there. Obviously, getting control of this high ground over here on the right side from the attacker's perspective is going to be pretty crucial. I expect most of the fight to happen over this right here. That's what we'll want to think about. And then we talked about how you would potentially push forward and pre-control this as the attackers if you'd want to fight. If we move on to the second half of third point, we have a nice right high ground thing here. Okay, we can see this. It pushed through. This is towards the end of the map here. We're from the right. There's a pool flank on the right that can be used. And then we have the final spawn room of the defenders just to the right on our screen here. So we have a main route here. We, of course, have a left flank that would go through there and then does kick itself out basically right where the end of the cap is. And then we're on the left flank right now looking in. There's a flank outside through the pool route. There's not a great shot I have of it for you in this presentation, but it does exist. You're going to have to fight for it a little bit. And then what we get to is sort of the end of the map. This is the end of the map. This is literally just a little to the right of where we were. That's the cap right there. And what's cool is there's a door right here. There's 4 spawn doors. So if we look at these 4 spawn doors, 1, 2, and then a mirrored 1, 2 over here as well. But behind this pillar, there is a door. And that door actually just is a continuation of that pool flank route and also is how you would get up. It has a staircase that would lead you up to this high ground that we're looking at here. And if we mirror it, we can see the exact same thing on the other side. So let's go ahead and do that. We've now flipped it. We're looking the other direction. We have a little bit better of a route into, oh, that's how it went. That's what main looked like. The pool flank is behind us. Okay, that makes sense. And again, these stairs, which are the same right behind us, go up like this and give you access to this high ground here, which is pretty great. And here's our flank route going through like this. So breaking into this point is likely going to it's probably going to feel pretty similar to the end of Rialto, where you've got to really use those 3 different paths to break in here. You can see some of that similar type of design here. It's probably going to be pretty important to take the right path that is right behind us right now, but that's going to be a longer flank that breaks up the path a little bit that you're not immediately influential in the fight. It's going to be the path that you would want to send your longer sightline heroes down, whereas we see the soldier right now has gone through this shorter sightline path. That's going to be for some of your shorter sightline heroes. I expect it to be the less important one. The angle is just too similar to main. It's going to be the less important flank. Generally, the sharper flank, the sharper angle is usually better for breaking a point. There can be some differences when something does a better job of getting you on top of a power position, like we talked about at the midpoint of first there and at the end of first. There's going to be quite a few of hard high grounds to break in this map. They do a lot of overpasses that you have to put the card under, that you're really going to have to clear before you have any chance of pushing it through. But that's going to do it. You should now have some insight into what the power positions are, what the different flank routes look like, an idea of, wait, we can push ahead to control this one. We really want to make sure we control these different angles to go get this one. We've got our pool flank to really get a good job into third. Hope that makes sense. If you want to keep your eye open for more insights like this, please drop a like, consider subscribing so you see more content like this going into Overwatch 2, and you can be more prepared than all your friends. Or if you want to be friendly, share the videos with your friends. I appreciate that as well. But I hope you have enjoyed, and that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks. Temporal out.